Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, buenos dias, ni hao, heseche, aquava, what up though? Welcome in, what up though? This is the weekly meeting of Wawiyam Kavitkik, our Global Federation of Villages. The hour is 06:09 Greenwich Mean Zone. It is day 24 of month dos of year 123 after the founding or after the commencement of the Parliament of the World's Religions, year 71 after the founding of the United Nations, day 5 of the week, day 5 of the new moon. And this weekly meeting of our Wawiyam Kavitkahika Global Federation of Villages is called Order. We begin with a blessing. May all beings be well. We continue with a recitation of our mantra from the preamble of our compact. We, the sentient beings of Wawiyam Kavitkahik, our Global Federation of Villages, observe the antiquated institutions and systems facilitating convention, and we believe we can do better. We recognize the historic and contemporary harm we cause each other, and we are dedicated to do better. We are dedicated to reconciliation. The wisdom of our ancestors, prophets, and sages tells us we do better by exercising compassion towards each other and all life. This begins by fundamentally respecting all beings, all life, all phenomena, and this continues through enhancing the wellness of all beings and all life steadfastly as universal citizens. We are better learning that when we do this, we also enhance our own respective individual wellness. Thus, we reconstruct our institutions and systems to be proficiently compassionate and transcendent. This includes our institutions and systems of religion, government, education, health, finance, commerce, socialization, and additionally, we fundamentally challenge previous precepts, theories, laws, and methodologies of selfishness. We declare a new age of compassion. And whilst our new institutions and systems supplant the antiquated institutions and systems, we facilitate this process with maximum peace, humility, stability, efficiency, and compassion. We practice wealth ethos, including ahimsa, ubuntu, veritas, haya, shu, maka, huga, samadhi, shema, shibono, narab. The proceeding text is provided for this purpose. Love and peace. So, attendance. Peter Johansson CC is on the books. And there are 0 official viewers. There's an absence of any emergency or urgent propositions, so that takes us to the minutes from the previous meeting. The previous meeting was convened on a week ago. It is called to order at 01:06 hour Greenwich Mean Zone on day 17 of month dos of year 123 after the commencement of the Parliament of the World's Religions, year 71 after the founding of the United Nations, day 5 of the week, day 12 of the full moon. Blessing is recited, mantra is recited. Attendance includes Peter Johansson OCC on the books and 0 official viewers. There's an absence of emergency or urgent propositions. The minutes are read, agendas read, committee reports include Wealth Ethos Trust Compact administrations, the notion of forming these, the tasks involved with these, some of those tasks including consular immunity. I provided explanation of Israeli Jiu-Jitsu Brasileiro Ahimsa, as well as extradition facilitated through such. And then I also share considerations regarding wealth ethos orientation, particularly for juveniles or youth within the juvenile system, as well as immigrant youth. I'm not heavy on the lean. Immigrant youth and additionally. So that is for that committee. Then there's also Gift Cove, which is the global fair trade, kosher, halal, organic, vegan marketplace. And so that involves development on the Plurality platform. It also includes a previously described initiative of fair trade for monks as well as co-op outreach is discussed within that scope, within that committee. And then the local village outreach. There's the agenda communication, which involves approaching offices, particularly human rights offices, particularly Amnesty International offices, in our respective locations, and identifying or soliciting the identification of the priority issue of each of these offices, of each of these communities, and through that communication, identifying an agenda accordingly that um, coalesces all these priorities. And so for the next year, identifying an agenda, a tangible agenda, and proceeding accordingly. So that's that. There's an absence of old business. There's an absence of new business. In a meeting a week ago, the mega update is provided, which includes a description regarding ancestral ceremonies, and that is actually intended to be included within this meeting today. And then there is also mentioning a reference to the intergovernment organization's rapprochement via Mega. And so there's that. Then for local village briefs, I share an update regarding UNI Village, and particularly the village experience. To be honest, it's it abstains from being in my notes, so I'm uncertain if I share it a week ago. Um, However, yeah, it's other than 2 weeks ago either, which is actually 3 weeks ago. Um, the previous meeting before that, so I'll share it today. I'll plan to share it today, God willing. So, anyways, that's just me talking out loud. Um, So I basically apparently just share the village experience, the steady improvement progression of familiarity amongst our villagers, and particularly with me, and there being increasingly favorable vibe and interaction within our UNI village. So, in regards to announcements, preceding the meeting, there is the UN Day in the beginning of another year of the tenure of the United Nations, as well as the completion of Sukkot within Judaism and the observance of Simchat Torah within Judaism, the approach of Diwali within the preceding week, a week ago, as well as Diwali within Hinduism, Juma on Friday within Islam, Shabbat that evening, and the Upasada Day approaching within Buddhism, which also include, oh yeah, so there's that, and then Sunday worship within Christianity, the approaching of feast within the Baha'i faith, as well as the approach of Guru Nanak Dev, the commemoration of the birth of Guru Nanak within the Sikh faith, the feast being in the Baha'i faith, Sunday worship being in the Christian faith, the Upasada, I think I mentioned, in the Buddhist faith. For benevolent news, I sing the Wat Ethos chant as well as the peace prayer song. The next meeting is scheduled for today at 06 hour Greenwich Mean Zone. The benediction is recited or shared, and the meeting is adjourned at 01:37 Greenwich Mean Zone for a duration of about half an hour. So there's that. That's the minutes from the previous meeting. The agenda for this meeting: there's an absence of old business and new business. There are committee before even that. Committee reports. There's a point of order actually first to share first, and then there's a committee reports again with What Ethos Trust compact administrations, with Gift Cove and with the local village outreach. There's an absence of old business. There's an absence of new business. There are some updates regarding Mega. There are some local village briefs. And there are announcements. There's benevolent news, and there's the scheduling of the next meeting, as well as the benediction and adjournment schedule. So that's the agenda generally for today for this meeting. So that being said, we continue on to the point of order. So just a brief side note, a point of order. The hour here where I'm located in our UNI village within the heights of the area of Cuyahoga on the shores of Lake Erie, amongst the big lakes of Turtle Island. The hour is 02:19 in the AM on the in la madrugada. So the point of order is that these meetings are scheduled according to Greenwich Mean Zone, and so actually I'm aware of this previously, but it kind of it escapes my conscientiousness for a little while. However, the fact is that there's a distinction between Greenwich Mean Zone and the actual hour that is observed within the area that is typically referred to as the Greenwich Mean Zone, otherwise known England, particularly London and the vicinity thereof. So technically, actually, for a portion of the year, there is a daylight savings time change in that vicinity, such that the actual local time is different than the Greenwich Mean Zone time. So when looking up the hour on many GPS and other type of global apps that share the time zone of different locations, the time that's reflected in these apps at this moment reflects that time change, which is referred to as, I think, British summertime, rather than Greenwich Mean Time. And so that's a challenge. And the similar practice is arbitrary. It's kind of imperialistic and whatever, but it is what it is, and it's pervasive throughout much of contemporary convention. So here on Turtle Island is also done. And as a matter of fact, I'm informed that the next scheduled occurrence of that time change is in a few days. So, anyways, I say that because for the previous meetings during the past year, I communicate the hour or the intended hour for the meetings to begin um, according to Greenwich Mean Zone, when in fact, generally the meetings are commenced according to the local London time rather than necessarily Greenwich Mean Zone. So technically, whenever these meetings begin, perhaps before the British summertime comes into effect within the past year, there's a consideration that some of the meetings are scheduled around Greenwich Mean Zone, but then amidst the emergence of British summertime for the past few months, there's an offsetting of by an hour. So that being said, I'm informed also that the London local time is recently goes back an hour to reconnect or coincide again with the Greenwich Mean Zone. So so it's back on the thing. That being said, the intention is to continue scheduling according to Greenwich Mean Zone, and amidst the emergence again of British summer time or British summer zone, the intention is to continue with Greenwich Mean Zone and just be aware of that for pragmatic purposes on how to discern or refresh one's memory about when Greenwich Mean Zone is according in relation to one's own respective position. It's helpful and ironic and interesting and even amusing, humorous to note that one like standard option that I find in utilizing a number of apps is that to find when actually when Greenwich Mean Time actually is amidst the British summertime diversion from such, one go-to location to identify Greenwich Mean Time is ironically Accra, Ghana. So it gives a little bit of a new insight to colored people time. But anyways, so that's amusing for me, and I think it should be amusing for people who are attuned with that type, with this culture of international global cosmopolitanism. So anyways, that's just a long point of order at this point. So there's that. The other irony is that these meetings abstain from always being convened at the scheduled hour. So that lends itself to the snarky comments about colored people time or whatever, cultured people time or whatever. So amidst that, there's a consideration that those who set the clocks also have certain tendencies of straying from the gears. Anyways, there's that. Amidst all that, there's understanding and patience, and acceptance and cooperation and harmony. So continuing on to committee reports for World Ethos Trust Compact Administration. It's still formation of tasks, still relevant, still World Ethos orientation relevant. However, amidst all that, excuse me. One considerable thing is I described a week ago the term Israeli Jiu-Jitsu Brasileiro Ahimsa. I provided a lengthy description of each of these terms and what is intended with these terms collected or together. I think I did with this in this form. I know I did it either in this form or in another form, but I'm pretty sure I did it in this form as well. But anyways, without going back into that conversation in detail, I just share the consideration, or I share the update that there's consideration of including an additional term within this multi-traditional term to describe the kind of security and protection and safety methodology of Woyam Kavit Kahik. The additional term is jihadi, and so obviously it's a very charged term. However, it's also understood that jihadi, in its truest and highest meaning, simply involves a personal struggle, an existential struggling, and actually striving for righteousness and compassion in a similar manner as Israeli. And so the consideration or the interest for including it is particularly to include both terms together amidst the contemporary challenges that exist between or amongst those communities that are directly connected with each of those and respectively connected with each of those terms and collectively connected with each of those terms. So it may be perceived as somewhat redundant because effectively jihadi has a very similar meaning to Israeli, although they're obviously very different. They're very distinct. They're very pronounced distinctions between the two terms, and as well as the traditions, the protocols, the methodologies amongst the two terms as well. So I just said that there's consideration of including it amidst particularly the there's consideration of including it. So that's something that's on the table and being considered. Beyond that, there's interest in connecting with other NGOs, IGOs regarding consular immunity, consideration of avenues for diplomacy. So the Trust Compact and consular immunity is increasingly recognized in a thing. So the World Service Authority is one organization that is it is a mundialist organization that promotes global citizenship. So there's the consideration of it being increasingly receptive to this initiative and position. There's also organizations like the International Bar Association, I think it's called, or International Bar Organization, which is basically an international umbrella organization of international lawyers. But a similar organizations that are similarly situated that can provide some type of backing, some support, some recognition of our Trust Compact, and even advocacy for the conference of or the conferral of consular immunity along based on the premise of the Trust Compact. So that's something on the works and being considered as well. So on to another committee report, Gift Code. So admittedly, I complete only a modest amount of progress in regards to our Gift Cove initiative. I update the Plurity, the Gift Cove channel or page on the Plurity platform. So it's a modest addition, but it's there. The big thing though, wow, excuse me, Mr. Yawns at the moment. The big thing at the moment is bolstering the international fair trade infrastructure, and with that, including the protocols of veganism and organic agriculture and kosher and halal as well. But the consideration is a very modest, scant amount of distributors, wholesalers, suppliers, retailers exist that are providing fair trade products on an international basis that is readily accessible to people. So there are big name online retailers that technically provide fair trade products if one searches diligently, need to distinguish such. Although it may be difficult to kind of verify that, but that's challenging. Aside from that, I actually, in doing research throughout the past year with Votive Co-op, and additionally, I find a modest number of fair trade distributors, suppliers. Um, However, the vast majority of these are regionally based and or nationally based or locally based. And so to find one that serves all our markets is challenging. There are a few, but what's interesting in the past week or so when I start doing some additional work on Gift Cove, and basically the methodology for the Gift Cove channel is to provide information and to provide links to fair trade organizations, suppliers, wholesalers, distributors, retailers, wholesalers, and excuse me, provide that information so that we each and additional loved ones, friends, family members can access these distributors to receive to make purchases, receive fair trade products, vegan, organic, kosher, halal. Additionally, so that's the basic intention with Gift Cove at the moment. The idea, though, also includes at some point brokering arrangements with suppliers, distributors, even wholesalers, so that through the auspices of Gift Cove, members or people who visit members can utilize the wholesale accounts established through Gift Cove with each of these suppliers to be able to make arrangements autonomously with the suppliers and directly with the suppliers, uh, banking off of the legwork of Gift Cove. So it's a kind of a different natured kind of a co-op, but that's a further consideration. Even further, there's a consideration of establishing alternative currency exchanges and additionally direct trade exchanges as well. So those are things in consideration with Gift Cove that also intrinsically involve our William Kavitke. Additionally, um, as I look at as I make preparations for this Gift Cove page on the Plurality platform, um, what I'm doing is I establish a channel, a sub channel or a sub page for each of our specific locations and the regions surrounding our specific locations, our respective locations. Um, with the intention of including lists of and links of to suppliers, fair trade, vegan, organic, kosher, halal um, suppliers within our respective locations who actually provide products to our specific locations. The intention also is to provide a kind of uh, general list for all of our respective locations of a general list of international suppliers and distributors. So that's what I'm actually working on at the moment. Yeah, literally to a certain extent. But I'm compiling a list of such international suppliers that pretty much deliver wherever throughout the earth in each of our locations. So as I do that, amidst my previous research, I identify a number of comparatively larger fair trade organizations, outfits, companies, recognizing that each one is based in a particularly vicinity here, near here in our area of Turtle Island. Yet with the presumption that many of these, or at least some of these, also distribute internationally, because it just perhaps that's the settler mentality of just presuming of a certain prevalence or something. But anyways, as I do the research to compile this list and confirm that distribution is available, shipping is available to each of our locations, I find out that many of these organizations that are comparatively big, at least here in the region of Turtle Island, many of these organizations abstain from delivering internationally and only deliver within this region. And so recognizing that the list becomes at the moment comparatively short. I also find additional fair trade organizations and alliances and co-ops as well. So it's a matter of sorting that out at the moment. So at the moment, that being said, there are those distributors that identify that are international, that deliver internationally, and those include Ramsden International, that deals increasingly on the wholesale level rather than necessarily at the retail level. So it requires additional bulk purchases, and I think it primarily utilizes container shipping and air freight shipping. Um, so Ramsden International, and the other one is REAL Foods, both based out of the UK. Ramsden out of I think England, and REAL Foods out of Scotland. So amidst the research that I do for the past year, particularly within the past week, those are suppliers that identify, even retailers that I didn't previously identify as saying from delivering internationally. I also exclude bigger named retailers that are those behemoth entities that I mentioned before that pretty much deliver many types of products and just simply include fair trade as part of it without certain intentionality. Oh, I think Vitacost also I should put there. I need to do that. Um, so what's the same? I skipped my train of thought there a little bit. So that being whatever that being said is, I'm continuing to compile those lists and provide that information and those links available. Make that available, and so yeah, I'm there's a little bit of a lightweight amount of surprise regarding how many of the bigger retailers abstain from delivering internationally. Um, I was talking about some of the big corporate retailers. So all that being said, it demonstrates a need for bolstering the international fair trade infrastructure, and so along those lines, there's a consideration of making an arrangement with an established distributor or an established distributor or supplier that deals exclusively with fair trade, um, compassion-based, ethical-based products, or working with a larger retailer that deals with multiple products. Rams International also deals with or offers non-fair trade products as well. So working with another organization, identifying what the most appropriate characteristics are, but working with an organization to establish a mechanism to facilitate international fair trade um, international fair trade products. And so it's kind of like a continuing progression of what I described for a gift code in terms of providing information, connecting people, opening wholesale arrangements that and making that available to participants, members, but going further to bolster the infrastructure, recognizing that there are a scant number of distributors. There's a modest amount of product offering, and so there's a lot of infrastructure. There's a substantial amount of infrastructure to strengthen it and to build and to strengthen when it comes to fair trade internationally. So I've yet to kind of discern an appropriate model or paradigm for such, because the concern, one of the main concerns, one of the big concerns, is how whenever it can be a very modest endeavor, like what I described with Gift Cove, of just establishing arrangements like with Makebari or Marley's Coffee or Equal Exchange, or Chai's Organics or Suma Foods, and additionally, and establishing, or many of those may abstain from delivering internationally, but establishing connections and wholesale accounts internationally with suppliers so that people can access that again autonomously, individually. Um, that can be very simple, actually. But it does take some doing. However, that being said, this idea of bolstering the international infrastructure, the international fair trade infrastructure, that can be a rather huge task, because at that point we're talking about probably distribution hubs, perhaps within our respective locations of Woodley and Kavik, and or additionally distribution hubs, operations management. Um, Shipping arrangements, and additionally, uh, obviously, all of that gets increasingly um, huge and complex, and requires a considerable amount of investment um, and diligence. So, within such circumstances, within such an endeavor, um, often, um, typically, the motivation is making money. And so people may see the value of such an endeavor, but only perceive it as valuable amidst the prospect of making money from it. So the whole nature of this endeavor of fair trade and vegan, organic, kosher, halal is uh, without the interest of making money, without getting rich, but just doing it because it's the right thing to do. And so and the efficacy of such an endeavor it relies upon the recognition that supporters, consumers, participants have towards the integrity of the principles upon which the endeavor is based. So that's a significant element in any kind of bolstering of infrastructure, at least that I do, that our UNI Village does, that Vote of Co-op does, and additionally, so um, even what our William Kavik does. So in devising a mechanism to facilitate these exchanges, um, it is important to include that consideration within that devising of such a mechanism. How to keep it humble, how to keep money kind of outside of the effective motivation for doing it, and how to like establish safeguards from greed, and the nastiness that comes with often with doing business. So I'm looking at the activity. It's deep in the madrugada at the moment. So to see people outside at the moment is comparatively unusual. And there's a person hanging outside the dumpster bin a few minutes ago, which is what I look at. So anyway, safeguards, ethical safeguards for any bolstering of international fair trade infrastructure, because there's already enough skepticism. And here's a cat, a literal cat. There's already skepticism and scrutiny and criticism regarding fair trade, and what is fair trade, and is it genuinely fair trade, and who says, and by what standards, and this, that, and the other. So for any endeavor, serious endeavor within this scope, it's appropriate to maintain an integrity when it comes to the ethical practices of such an organization and individuals within such an organization. So something to keep in mind. And I'm starting to draw us off, so I'm going to try to get through this comparatively quickly at this point. We're on committee reports. So those are some of the things in the works. Fair trade for monks is still on the agenda to complete for this committee, but I have modest capacity, modest availability, and ability to do all of this. So until additional people come in, there can be expected to be delays. So it's still in the works. And then reaching out to co-ops is still in the works as well. So that's much of what's happening with our gift cove. So I'm going to leave it at that. Next committee report is local village outreach. So this includes the reaching out regarding the agenda. I described what that is. I have yet to send out, or actually I have yet to make the phone calls. It may be a while still before I do so. However, well, maybe I do it. Maybe I can do it. I do have it. Technically, I have an increased amount of availability, but I'm playing catch up a lot, so I'm still less available than well. There's still challenges in being available to do additional tasks like this, but it's still on the burner, and there's still intention. So there's that, and also to that extent, I mentioned contacting amnesty offices. So I actually do contact the regional office for this vicinity of the regional office of Amnesty International, designated for this immediate vicinity. And so about connecting with an amnesty group and even in getting involved with a local amnesty group. And so I call out, and I get a call back, and there's an exchange of emails. And so I'm introduced to one of the local organizers of the amnesty group. So that's a work in progress. So there is some development in that respect and progress in that respect. And amidst all that, there's still the intention. There continues to be the intention of contacting the respective amnesty offices in our respective locations. It's simply a matter of my availability to do so, or another individual's availability to do so. So that is that. That's much of what's happening with the local village outreach. So that being said, those are the committee reports. That brings us to old business. There's an absence of old business. There's an absence of new business. For mega update, I mentioned before the ceremonies to honor our ancestors. I actually complete compositions for those ceremonies within the past week, and I share that with loved ones, respectively. And so each one has obviously when dealing with the endeavor of honoring ancestors, there's profundity within it. So each one is heavy, and it's a labor of love and light that I experience in producing these compositions, and so this past week, a few days ago, I actually stay up all night just to get it completed to some degree of completion. And I share that accordingly, just because it's a heavy load to carry on one's own. So, and with also the consideration that it's beneficial for others as well. It's intended to be to serve to provide benefit to others as well. So I share it in that respect as well. I share it, and I also intend to recite one of the poems of one of the ceremonies as well. Honoring all ancestors of humanity throughout humanity. So, so that's part of the development update regarding Mega. Continuing with the intergovernment organization rapprochement, with the weekly news briefs, and continuing with the initiative regarding the global mixed census, as well as the International Declaration on the Rights of Mixed People. So those are some of the things that are to update with Mix or with Mega. One other thing is that there's a conference called Mixed Remixed. I have yet to that is one of the comparatively larger conferences within the mixed movement, particularly here on Turtle Island, that I have yet to directly participate within, which I have yet to directly participate. So given that, and given some challenges regarding other conferences and events, there is the intention of me attending the Mixed Remixed conference upcoming in about 7-8 months from this point. So I'm working on making arrangements for that, particularly covering or to acquire the transportation and accommodations. So that's a work in progress, but that's one of the updates regarding Mega. And the intention is also to promote Mega and the projects that Mega is working on at the moment. So So there's that. So that's the mega update. On to the local village briefs. So I mentioned before being uncertain whether I shared this information before, but just for purpose or just for FYI, a few weeks ago there is a shooting here in our UNI village. It sounds very close to where my location is. It sounds like it's right outside the window. It happens around 2 a.m., 2 a.m., maybe 1 a.m. in la madrugada. And so when it happens, perceiving it that it actually occurs on the land of our UNI village, I go out to look to see what the situation is. So there's a whole story about what happens. So, and I intend to abstain from delving into all of that, but uh, I I reach a point where it seems like the situation is quelled. The settler law enforcement arrives and is talking with people, and things seem to be effectively quelled or calmed at that point, to the point where my continuing involvement seems less effective at that moment. And so, given that, or adds comparatively less to the situation, well, I'm not even gonna say that. It's deemed appropriate for me to return back to my domicile, and that is what I do. So that's one of the updates. Another update is that there's a cat fight that occurs this past Friday, and I intervene within the cat fight. Cat fight meaning that might be, some may perceive that as a pejorative or derogatory uh, term. However, basically, what I'm just describing a physical altercation between two young women. And so I intervene, I intercede, and I gain some experience and some insight from that experience, wherein or from which, well, I'll leave it at that. So again, I abstain from getting into the details. Um, there's an absence of anybody seriously harmed during that experience. Um, and the altercation is effectively alleviated amidst my intercession. And the two young women continue to walk on to another location. So that's my basically description of the events. The other consideration with our UNI village in our brief is the relationships here are continuing to improve. I mentioned that before, but um, I'm increasingly seeing people repeatedly and recognizing each other accordingly, and cultivating that experience of village, which is a lost art form here on Turtle Island amongst our pervasive metropolises. So we are strengthening that experience of village here, which is positive. So there's that. That's the UNI village brief, our local village brief for UNI village. That brings us to announcements. So again, this past week there is the observance of Diwali within Hinduism. That concludes, I think, yesterday actually, but the main day is a Saturday evening, I think. And there's also the recent occurrence of Upasada, the Upasada day within Buddhism, as well as the new moon in a number of traditions, and Rosh Chodesh within Judaism, which is also the observance of the new moon. Upcoming this week includes feast within the Baha'i faith, Juma, Manana within Islam, Shabbat later that evening in Judaism, and then the next day, Sunday worship within Christianity. Also on deck, approaching, is Guru Nanak Dev, the commemoration of the birth of Guru Nanak. So those are some of the events, the observances, religious, spiritual, and additionally, that are recently occur and that are upcoming amongst our respective traditions. So there's that. That brings us to benevolent news. Wow, okay. Let's see if I can stay awake for this. I'm hearing loud or louder voices in the distance. So it's raining. It's actually comparatively warm for this time of year here in this region. But it is the middle of the night. It's in the madrugada, and it's almost 3 a.m. local time. So to hear people, and particularly raised voices, is it warrants additional attention. So that's what I do. That being said, benevolent news. Um, this poem is called River Stream, and I composed this in conjunction with the composition for the affirming our ancestors ceremony, which is for all people, but particularly for mixed people who have ancestry from different ethnic communities. So this is an honoring of all ancestors of humanity. And so that's the basic foundation from which